Welcome to week 3 of Spirit Groups and our focus on Byron Katie's The Work. I trust that as you've been looking at your stories, you've been experiencing them and maybe hoping shift some of that energy for yourself to experience your stories, maybe even release your stories. You don't have to. You can hold on to them, but watch what happens as you move through that. Our focus this week is on money and the work, our stories around those things. And so the getting to know you question I invite you to share with each other is, what accomplishment makes you most proud? What accomplishment makes you most proud? So I'll share first. One of the accomplishments that makes me most proud is getting to the top of Mount Langley and back. That's always important. But it was our third attempt. I'd worked with a friend of mine. Our first 2 attempts had not worked out for various reasons. One, we got lost the first time. Second time, we were given an alternate route that did not work. So the third time, I woke up the morning that we were going to start up, and I had altitude sickness, and I felt awful. But I got up, and I just hiked with one foot in front of the other. I just affirmed God, life, made it to the top, have a picture to prove it. And whenever I'm facing something else in my life that's challenging or I'm feeling resistance to it, I'll look at that picture and I'll say, if I can do that, I can take care of this. So that's my accomplishment. Please share your accomplishment with those in your group. So welcome back. Hope that you had a chance again to get to know each other a little bit better. And as we're looking at the things about our work and money, we have all kinds of stories. Usually the story for me around money for years and years was, there's not enough. We don't have enough. We're not making enough. Not enough. That was the story. And Meredith and I went to a counselor years ago, and his question to us is, how much is enough? And that helped us look at our story. But one of the things that Emily Katie shares is, if someone loses their job, she says, which is more empowering, this thought, I wish I hadn't lost my job, or the thought, I lost my job, what intelligent solutions can I find right now? It's a very different thought, isn't it? Whenever anybody comes to me and tells me, oh, I lost my job, I always say, good. They say, what do you mean good? I said, well, you didn't like that job anyways. They said, well, how do you know I didn't like that job? I said, you got fired. If you liked the job, you wouldn't have gotten fired. And they go, oh, yeah. So I said, now it's time to find a job you like. And it, again, changes because, again, we've lost the job. We feel bad about that. And that's okay to feel bad about that. But that's not the end of the story. And so we recognize that we can look at our story and say, what's the other story? The story is, what do I have? What do I want to do? What can I create in a new way, in a different way? And that's what's important as we look at our stories and move through them. So she has a couple of quotes in the book that I like. This is from Michael Gonzinga, director of the Sage Center for the Study of the Mind at the University of Santa Barbara. And what he says is this: the left brain weaves its story in order to convince itself and you that it is in full control. It's a spin doctor, an interpreter, and it's really trying to keep our personal story together. And to do that, we learn to lie to ourselves. And that's these stories that we tell. Something happens and we have a story about it to make ourselves feel better. But it usually doesn't make us feel better. We're still in that upset or what isn't working in our life. So here's another quote. Antonio Damasio, director of Brain and Creativity Institute at the University of Southern California. Perhaps the most important revelation in human split brain research is precisely this: that the left cerebral hemisphere of humans is prone to fabricating verbal narratives that do not necessarily accord to the truth. Ever experienced that? It's usually easier to identify it in the other person as, well, they're not telling the truth. But again, what are the stories that we're telling? And so there's so much to look at this. Now, there's a dialogue that she has in her book. This starts on page 167, if you have the book, if you want to read along or not. It's titled, He's So Incompetent. So Gary is the name that's given here. Gary says, I'm angry at Frank because he is incompetent when he works for me. So Katie says, okay, Frank should be competent. Is it true? Gary says, well, I think so. Can you absolutely know it's true? So she's going through the questions. Is it true? Is it absolutely true? Whoever told you that? Did his resume say he's competent? Does his recommendation say he's competent? It's all over the place. You hire him. He's supposed to be competent. What's the reality of your experience? Is he? In my experience, he's not. So that's the only place you can sanely start from, reality. Is it true that he should be competent? No, he's not. That's it. That's your reality. So you keep going over this until you get the is it true thing. Because when you understand this, you become a lover of reality and move into balance. How do you react when you believe the lie that he should be competent when he works with you and he's not? It's frustrating and anxiety producing. I feel like I'm having to carry his work. I have to clean up behind him every time. I can't leave him alone to do his work. Can you see a reason to drop the thought that he should be competent? And I'm not asking you to drop it. It would make me feel better if I could drop it. That's a very good reason. Could you find one stress-free reason to keep the thought that opposes reality? Yes, well, I don't see what you mean by opposes reality. The reality, as you see it, is that he's not competent. You're saying he should be. The theory's not working for you because it opposes reality. I hear you say that it causes you frustration and anxiety. Okay, I think I'm pulling this apart. The reality is he's not competent. What's making me crazy is thinking he's supposed to be competent rather than just accepting what he is. He's incompetent, whether you accept it or not. Reality doesn't wait for our agreement or approval. That's what it is. You can count on that. So in the dialogue, she's leading Gary to this experience, or leading Frank to this experience that he's opposing reality. He should be competent. Well, he's not. So you thinking he should be doesn't help you because you're living in it. And so finally what he realizes is that what he's been doing anyways, he's been having to do the other guy's work. So why not just do the other guy's work and get it done and not make up a story about it and not have all this frustration and energy? And then once he does that, and he finally came to realize that he needed to fire this guy, and she says that's going to be a gift to him because he can find a place where he will be competent, where he will look at what he's doing. And she tells another story in here where somebody had an assistant that wasn't working out, and as he fired her, she was so happy because she found a job close to where she lived, where she could make the adjustment that she was asking him to make that didn't work for him. So it worked out for him, worked out for her. So when we come to that clarity, it makes all the difference in the world. And so as we look at the stories that we tell, what are the stories that we're telling about our work, about our coworkers, about what's wrong with them, what's wrong with the job, what's wrong with the boss? One of the great things I remember hearing years ago, they think of the word boss, B-O-S-S, it's double S-O-B backwards. And you can live with that because I had a boss. I bought into that story that he is a boss backwards. And to recognize that when we live in that and it becomes so strong in us, that's the filter that we see the thing, and that energy infects everybody around us as well. And so this was in my early time of attending Unity in my beginning years. And so I remember that this went on for about 3 months, just living in this story of that he was an SOB. And so one day in meditation, it came to me, if I'm a child of God and he's a child of God, maybe our experience should be different. And so I just posed the question, okay, so if I was going to treat him as a child of God, what would that look like? And so Spirit said, well, just greet him with a smile when he comes in. He would always come in late. And he'd always come in and we'd have priorities and they would shift before he got there, and the assistant, boss would have us do that. So he'd walk in and say, why are you doing this? You're supposed to be doing it. So I would just smile and say good morning. And so I've made that my practice. I'm not going to react to his energy. I'm going to come from my energy. And so within 3 months of me making that shift, I found out that he played guitar. Well, I play guitar. So we brought our guitars in. At lunchtime, we'd trade songs and stuff like that. Then a little later, we found out he likes to play chess. One of the other guys liked to play chess. So we ended up doing chess games at lunch. So again, it shifted the energy. And 3 months after that, he got promoted out of our department. And our assistant boss became our boss. So it's like, it was good for him. It was good for us. So again, when we change our story, the energy changes for everyone and everything. One person can make the difference with that. So I really invite you, as you're thinking about Other people at work, your job, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, things you'd like to be changed, about money, enough, not enough, you wish you could do this and that. To get the questionnaire, fill out, what are my thoughts about this? What's the energy? What are the feelings I have about that? And ask the questions. Is it true? Is it absolutely true that my boss is an SOB? Well, probably not at home with his family. Probably not for his supervisor. They ended up promoting him, so obviously he wasn't an SOB to them. So I can change it. Who am I with that story? I'm uncomfortable. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. Who would I be without that story? I can be the child of God that I was expressed, that is created to be. And so here's the gift that we give to each other by being able to do that. So here's some more things here. She says that every story is a variation on a single theme. This shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't have to experience this. God is unjust. This isn't fair. It's all the variation of it should be different than it is, rather than saying, here's what it is. What are my choices? How can I shift this in a new way? And one of the things she says many times, people say, well, if I didn't have the fear, it wouldn't motivate me. I'm afraid, well, then I'm going to work harder. And so she says, who would you be if you didn't believe that you needed to have fear to motivate you? Would you actually be freer and more creative because you're not operating under that sense of fear in your life? She says, every time we do the work, we are becoming enlightened to who and what we are, the true nature of our beings. That's the gift of this. We get out of those limiting stories and are able to live from the expansiveness of who and what we are. To question what you believe is an amazing gift to give to yourself. You can have it all the days of your life. The answers are always within you, just waiting to be heard. So again, here's the steps. Notice who or what upsets you. Recall a specific situation. Begin just be still, be relaxed. Travel in your mind to that situation. Are you angry? Are you hurt? Are you sad? Are you frustrated? Disappointed? Be there. And then, what are the thoughts? What are the feelings? Again, write it out. Use the worksheet. It makes a difference. And stay anchored in the situation, and then ask the questions. Is this true? Oh, yeah, that's the way it happened. That's what they did. Is it absolutely true that he's an ignoramus? Well, no. He sure acts like it, though. But again, this yes or no. So who am I as I hold that thought? I've got all this energy that's binding me up. Who would you be without that thought? So many times when people get to that question, who would I be without that thought? There is laughter because they go, I don't need to hold that story anymore. I can live with a sense of freedom. And so this is the gift that we give to ourselves, and then turn it around. There's something wrong with him. Well, there's something wrong with me for judging him. There's something wrong with me for living in the story and preventing myself from living out of the joy that I have. There's something right with him. That's another turnaround. So what can I find that's right with this person? What can I find that is going to help work in this situation? Is there some skill that I've identified that they have, that I can let them work in that area and not work in the area where they don't have the skills? So those turnarounds help us move forward. And it says to do the turnarounds, find opposites to the original statement on the worksheet, and it can be turned around to yourself, to the others. And usually there's 3 turnarounds, but you can play with that as you work through it. So here's one more quote here. Who would I be without the thought, I need my money to be safe? You might be a lot easier to be with. You might even notice the laws of generosity, the laws of letting money go out fearlessly and come back fearlessly. You don't ever need more money than you have. Now there's a thought. Is that true? Is it absolutely? You never need more money than you have. That's one to look at. When you understand this, you begin to realize that you already have all the security that you wanted money to give you in the first place. And it's a lot easier to make money from this position. Catherine Potter always says that when you're scared and you say that money is scarce, you're scaring money away. So if you're living in that story, it's time to work with it, time to change it. So take some time to discuss these ideas with those in your group. Well, I hope there was a lot that you were able to share and experience as we move through this process. To me, I'm enjoying reading this book and doing the work. It's making a big shift for me, realizing I'd done this years ago, but it's an ongoing process. It's something that we keep working on all the time. So for next week, Shara will be leading, and it's on the chapter, Doing the Work on Self-Judgment is what's coming up next. So again, I invite you, if you've got the book, to be reading through. You don't need to read it cover to cover. You can just sort of pick the section that you're working. If you're working on work and money, look at that section. If you're working on relationships, look on that section. You can come back to the rest of it later. And just as a blessing, just to know that as you continue to be present to your story, you can also be present to that underlying truth, that reality of who and what you are. Meditating on this so that it dissolves can help you be present to meditating on your real self, that light, that love, that joy that you are. Blessings.